xin chào. Chào các em. Hey, chào các em. Hey, chào các bạn đang xem ở Facebook Live. Xin chào. Cảm ơn đã tham gia. Thì bây giờ đây là lần thứ 3 thầy đã ở đây. Thầy nhận ra tay lại. Cảm ơn đã quay lại. Các bạn đã học với thầy vài lần rồi thì chắc là biết, sẽ không ngạc nhiên. Thì thầy nói thầy sẽ bắt đầu bằng tiếng Việt. Thầy luôn luôn bắt đầu bằng tiếng Việt làm cho mọi người thoải mái, cũng làm cho mọi người tin vào thầy. Và nếu thầy có thể dám nói tiếng Việt đằng trước mặt của các bạn người Việt Nam thì chắc chắn các bạn có thể nói tiếng Anh với thầy nhé. Trước khi thầy bắt đầu, thầy muốn hỏi ai đã học với thầy một hoặc hai lần rồi? Can you raise your hand? Ôi trời ơi, có quá nhiều return customer. Cho ai đây là lần đầu tiên người đã bao giờ gặp thầy? Nhìn mặt của thầy cũng có vài người. Ok, cũng có. Ok, và ở đây nếu các bạn đã tốt nghiệp rồi, đang học rồi, đang là một professional rồi, can you raise your hand, please? About a quarter, only a quarter. Who is a university student? Học trường đại học. Oh wow, nhiều lắm. Okay, và anyone under university? Nhiều hơn nữa. Oh wow. Chào các em. Ok. Xin lỗi, thầy biết là có quá nhiều sinh viên ở đây đã gặp thầy một hai lần rồi. Thầy sẽ cần phải nói lại cho các bạn hỏi, xin lỗi nhé. Thầy sẽ giới thiệu bản thân mình một chút bằng tiếng Việt, sau đó thầy sẽ nói một chút về chương trình này. Và các bạn đã rất là may mắn vì lesson này, lecture này là lecture mà thầy thích nhất, thầy thú vị nhất. Nhưng mà bắt đầu từ bức tranh đầu tiên nhé. Thầy tên là Alexander Yates, không có ai gọi thầy là Alexander, thầy là Alex. Alex Yates. Thầy đã sống ở Việt Nam gần 4 năm rồi, chưa được 4 năm, nhưng mà không phải là 4 năm liên tiếp. Ngày xưa thầy và gia đình của thầy đã có nhiệm vụ của Đại sứ quán Mỹ, cho nên đã ở đây 3 năm. Chào các em, hello, cảm ơn đã đến. Và sau đó thầy đã có nhiệm vụ tiếp theo ở Afghanistan, và sau đó thầy quay lại ở đây, và bây giờ thầy sống ở đây không làm cho Đại sứ quán nữa, chỉ dạy ở Đại sứ quán rồi. Thầy đã thường làm ngoại giao, nhà văn, chủ công ty, và còn gì nữa? Giáo sư. Thầy đã dạy trường đại học ở Syracuse và ở George Mason University. Thầy rất là thích Việt Nam. Đó là lý do thầy đã đóng lập công ty ở đây với vài người bạn thân. Thực ra là bạn thân của thầy cũng là người Mỹ, cũng biết nói tiếng Việt rồi thế, rồi hôm thầy luôn. Bạn ấy đôi khi đang nói chuyện điện thoại với khách hàng bằng tiếng Việt, khách hàng Việt Nam. Sau đó khách hàng Việt Nam có mặt ở văn phòng, bảo là sếp ở đâu? Sếp ở kia không phải. Đây là ông thầy nhưng đã vui nói chuyện với một người Việt. Rồi luôn. Thầy cũng rất là thích dạy ở đây và gặp học sinh Việt Nam và dạy học sinh Việt Nam. Công ty của thầy là công ty tư vấn du học, cho nên thầy có cơ hội làm việc với quá nhiều học sinh Việt Nam. Và thầy đam mê về bài viết, đam mê về việc dạy học sinh Việt Nam. Thầy cũng đam mê về việc viết văn và viết essay. Và xin lỗi, thầy sẽ nói lại, các bạn đã nghe thầy vài lần rồi. Khi thầy đam mê về cái gì, thầy rất hay nói nhanh. Khi thầy cảm thấy rất là, nói thế nào, rất là excited, rất là để ý, rất là quan tâm, nói nhanh luôn. Và thầy biết là các bạn cũng có thể biết nói tiếng Anh, nhưng mà nếu thầy nói nhanh quá và các em cảm thấy không hiểu lắm thì làm ơn đừng ngại. Thực ra thầy đã dạy ở đây 2 lần rồi và chưa có ai bảo ôi thầy ơi please slow down. Nhưng mà thầy vẫn sợ cô ấy cảm thấy không hiểu lắm vì thầy nói quá nhanh. Nhưng mà không dám nói ra. Làm ơn, nếu không hiểu cái gì thì stand up, raise your hand, just say hey please slow down cũng được, ok? Please repeat cũng được, ok? Sẽ repeat từ bức tranh đầu tiên nhé. Thầy tên là Alex Yates. Thầy cũng đã bắt đầu nói bằng tiếng Việt vì chắc thầy chưa nói giỏi lắm. So với những người Tây Ba Lô ở đây thì thế này là giỏi. Nhưng mà thầy không hài lòng. Thầy vẫn nói hơi kém. Ví dụ thầy đã vừa nói khi lúc nào thầy cảm thấy hơi excited, thầy không phải là tiếng Việt, nhưng mà thầy không biết nói excited bằng tiếng Việt. Thầy đã chấp nhận mình chưa hoàn hảo và vẫn phải nói tiếp. Cho nên khi các em sẽ hỏi thầy cái gì, hay muốn nói cái gì, thì đúng quá căng thẳng nhé. Vì thầy hiểu các em là người Việt Nam, chắc chắn sẽ không nói tiếng Anh hoàn hảo, hay chưa. Đối với thầy là người Mỹ, thầy nói tiếng Việt hơi chưa hoàn hảo là điều rất là dễ hiểu. Ok? Cho nên thoải mái. Vẫn hôm nay cũng có khá nhiều người, nhưng mà thầy sẽ cố gắng hết sức để làm cho ai cũng có một câu hỏi để nói nhé. Ok? Okay. Okay, great. I'm going to switch now to English. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm going to talk a little bit about the previous classes. Now that we have everyone on this side of the room is new. You guys came in after I started the introduction. Can I just ask one more time for the whole group? If this is your first time taking a class with me, can you put your hand up? Okay, so it's about a third of the room. Every class stands by itself, so you don't have to have taken the other classes to understand what I'm going to talk about today. I'm talking about kind of a discrete subject every time, but I'll just talk a little bit about the cycle of the series and what's coming next. So this is all about academic writing. And when I say academic writing, I mean writing essays for school, but really I mean all writing. Really I mean any writing where you're trying to make an argument. Whether it's an important email to your boss, a college application essay, or a report that you're doing for your work. Anytime when you're trying to communicate an idea to someone. So in our first class we talked about claims. What is a claim? And when is the appropriate time to come to a claim in your writing process? The second time we talked about audience, how to understand your audience and your rhetorical situation and adjust your claim to be appropriate to your audience. And today we're talking about drawing conclusions from evidence. There's two kind of subtopics I'm going to be talking about today, and that is complicating evidence and understanding evidence in context. Now, before we go to the next slide, I always like to start with a question. So let me just ask the room to get your bravery going, get everyone comfortable speaking. What is evidence? Okay, it's something to prove something. Okay, that's a very good start. Someone else, give me some. Facts and figures, evidence, or data, similar, can be evidence. Sorry? A clue, I like that approach. Facts, figure, data, a clue, that's like in the crime style of evidence. What else? Ah, he said stories can be evidence. How can a story be evidence? Ah, okay. Okay, so yeah, so like a primary source, a first-person account of something is evidence about what really happened. Very good. What else?
Case study.
Sorry?
Case study.
Case study, yeah. A case study should be a compendium of a lot of evidence, but then if you're talking in general, you can say, as cited in this case study, absolutely. Expert testimony makes excellent evidence. Good. We're not answering the question now. We're just kind of gathering up some information. Okay. Now we're going to a funner question. And it's related to what you said. What do a detective and an academic writer have in common? Please. Okay, they both want to prove something. Great, that's a good starting point. I'm going to write it down, it's so good. So, a detective and a writer want to prove something. What do they want to prove? claim, their opinion, their hypothesis. Very good. Okay, so a detective and an academic writer, they both want to prove something. And what do they want to prove? It's an idea that they have based on facts. It's their opinion. Okay. So if I decide that, before everyone came in, somebody asked me, em nói lại bằng tiếng Việt đi. Em đã hỏi anh, nói câu này bằng tiếng Anh là bằng tiếng Việt đi.
Thầy ơi, giờ cao su nói tiếng Anh như thế nào?
Giờ cao su, ví dụ giờ cao su. Okay, so she asked a question I couldn't answer vì tiếng Việt bằng quá kém. She asked, giờ cao su nói bằng tiếng Anh như thế nào? And I made a joke. Oh, giờ cao su bằng tiếng Anh là Vietnamese time. Right? So if I wanted to, let's say I'm an academic writer, and my claim và đúng quá ghét thầy nhé, thầy rất là yêu Việt Nam. Quá yêu, thầy thoải mái ở đây rất yêu Việt Nam, nhưng my claim is Vietnamese people are always late, all the time. Vietnamese people are late. Oh, your turn is not yet come. I promise it will. Vietnamese people are always late, and my evidence is that when the class started, a bunch of people came in late. I was already talking, a bunch of people came in late. Am I doing a good job as an academic writer when I use evidence in that way? No, I'm doing a terrible job. I'm doing a garbage job. But why? Because I just did what we kind of said. I wanted to prove something. I had an opinion, I had a claim. My claim is Vietnamese people are always late. And then I had evidence, right? And you guys saw it. I was here talking to you, and then, whoa, lots of people coming in after the start time. Why am I doing a bad job? Well, it's my own opinion, own experience, but you saw it too. It's not, oh, who said that? I like that. Where are we? Be brave. Someone said not representative. Who said it? They. It's not representative. Okay. What else? I mean, it is just one example. Mặc dù là quá nhiều người, nhưng mà một ví dụ thôi. Okay. I could be biased. Well, I mean, I am biased, right? Because I made the joke before they came. So I've revealed my bias already. I made the joke before they came. What else? Yeah, it's not very scientifically rigorous. And also, there's a big thing you guys are missing. You guys should be saying it. You're the ones who know why you came in late. Các bạn đã đi vào phòng muộn vì lý do gì? Vì không được có sự phép vào, hả? They were all on time, but they were waiting outside. I'm taking the evidence out of context. They were waiting in standby to see if there was enough room to come in. And once the American Center realized there was enough room to come in, they let them come in. Thực ra là ai cũng đã đến gần như đúng giờ. But I started with a bias. I started with a claim. Then I looked for proof. Proof is, and prove is not a helpful word. Because when you're trying to prove something, it means, oh, I believe this. Let me find evidence that says it's true. Right? I believe Vietnamese people are late. So let me find a bunch of examples of Vietnamese people being late, and then I'll give the examples and everyone will believe me. And then when I find an example, it seems like a good example at first, because I was speaking, they did come in late, but they were on time. It was just because we were managing the room and making sure there was enough space for everybody. So that is the way a bad writer approaches evidence. It's also the way a bad detective approaches evidence, right? My phone is missing. Who took my phone? I don't see it. It's gone. Who took my phone? No, the camera's facing that way. The camera doesn't see my phone. And that camera is just for Facebook Live, and we can't ask them. We can't ask them. Do you guys see where my phone is? I feel really strongly like it's this guy in the peach hoodie with the hat. I don't like his black hat. I don't like the way he's looking at me. He's got an earring. I don't trust the earring. I feel really uncomfortable. And I think he did it. I'm pretty sure he did it. Who thinks he did it? I do. But I think he did it. You know why I think he did it? He's close, right? He's close to the phone. Also, I know Tao. Tao would not steal my phone. I don't know his name. I was talking to these people, right? So I had my back turned on him. So he had the opportunity. I already know he's a sketchy character because he's evidence as a clue. So my evidence is he's close, he had opportunity. None of these people would have dared to do it because I know them and also I was so close to them, right? And so I'm talking to these people. The only one close enough who had the opportunity, who doesn't also know me, because I know this gentleman as well, is him. So obviously he stole my phone. That's the work of a bad detective. I have an idea and then I just look for evidence to support my idea. Bad detective, bad writer. The right thing to do as a writer is to consider yourself a detective and try and find the truth. You're trying to find it, you're trying to tell it. The appropriate approach to writing, even if you have a strong feeling about your subject matter, is to start with the evidence and look for things that can challenge your own beliefs. Look for things that don't agree with you. Look for things that can prove you wrong. If you're trying to write a paper and you go in, before you do any research, right? I'm trying to write a paper and I go in and I know what I'm going to write about. I know my claim. I know what I'm going to do. That means the whole paper's failed already. Because I'm not being honest. If I have a claim and then I only look for things that agree with my claim, we have a special word for that in English. Do you know what that word is? It's a special word. Counter argument is one. Could be, that's not exactly what I'm thinking of. So I have an idea like he stole my phone. And then I need to find evidence that he stole my phone. Opinion? Yeah. I'm writing an essay where let's say I ignore the evidence against it. I ignore the fact that he doesn't have a bag he could put the phone in. Nobody saw him move. There was a big crowd, right? Somebody would have said, yeah, he did it. Nobody said that. But if I make an argument where I ignore the evidence against me, and I only use the evidence that agrees with me, agrees with my claim, supports my claim, the special word we use for that in English is that I am lying. Lying. Any essay worth reading, any academic essay worth reading, just like any detective worth believing, starts with the evidence and goes where the evidence, follows where the evidence takes them. It's called drawing, after all, the class is called Drawing Conclusions from Evidence, not finding evidence for your conclusions. If you ever find yourself looking for a specific kind of evidence, like, well, I think this is bad, let me find evidence that this is bad. It doesn't necessarily mean that your essay is doomed, but it does mean you're maybe on the wrong foot. The better thing is, oh, I'm writing an essay about this topic. Let me read about it. Let me read about how taxes affect economic growth. Because there's a lot of opinions out there and there's a lot of data out there. And then let me form my own opinion based on all the evidence I see. Just like the criminologist walks into the crime scene, looks at everything, and then tries to form their own opinion of who's guilty. Speaking of criminals, we're going to play a game. This game is usually done with small groups, but I actually think it'll work quite well with a big group. Now, before I start, I know you're going to know this. Who has taken a creative writing class with me? Em quen hết rồi à? What? Anh thì nó quen quá thú vị, anh đã quen à? Ok. Chỉ là 3 năm thôi. Okay, so I did some classes maybe 3 months ago on creative writing. No one in here took them. Yay. Okay, did you? Good. Good. Okay, because this is we're going to do 2 exercises. One of them is applicable to both creative and academic writing. If anyone has taken this exercise with me before, please, I say this with only love and politeness, shut up. Please keep it to yourself. If you haven't taken the exercise, I want to hear from you. Okay, so the exercise is, we have a scenario. We have a fancy but old house. It's a very mysterious house. This house has been on the streets for as long as anyone can remember. But the person that lives in this house is really mysterious. Nobody actually knows who lives there. Sometimes the lights will turn on at night, so they know someone's there. But they just don't know who it is. But that was about, that was for a few years, but then about 3 weeks ago, there's no more lights. The house is dark. The windows are open. Somebody walks by one day, walking their dog, and they realize the door is wide open. And they go into the house. They go up to the house and they peek their head inside. And they say, "Hi, hello? Is everyone okay?" And there's no answer. And so they say, "That's a little weird. I'll call the police." And they call the police to see. Just they should check it out. Maybe something's wrong. Maybe someone's sick. Maybe someone fell. They call the police. Guess who the police are? You guys. For this exercise, we're all going to be the detectives who walk into this house and examine the evidence. So we're all, let's just say we're all one detective, but we have a partner. And we hear about an open house with a missing person. The thing is, we don't even know who the missing person is. Walk into the house. A man or woman lives in this house, we don't know. So we walk in, and the first thing we see as we're approaching the house is not approaching the house, we're in it. So there's a large, airy sitting room with 2 broad windows overlooking a posh residential street. Posh is not an American word, it's an English word. English as in the country, England. Everyone knows what the word posh means? Yeah, posh. It even sounds luxurious. Posh means luxurious. Posh means fancy and expensive. A posh residential street. There are armchairs lined with velvet and a sofa arranged before a brick fireplace. Everyone knows what velvet is, right? Does anyone, or rather I'll say, someone tell me what velvet is. Close, it's a fabric. It's generally not a rug, though I like the idea of a velvet rug. I could walk around on it barefoot. Velvet is it's an expensive fabric. It feels really kind of soft and very nice to the touch. Velvet. Sometimes people say if there's a really lovely fluffy cat, the cat is velvety. So velvet armchairs, and they're sitting before a brick fireplace. There's a real bearskin rug in front of the fireplace and a violin case leaning against the wall. And there are pipes and tobaccos within easy reach of the sofa, along with a case of spirits and a soda machine. Everyone, spirits. What are spirits? Wine or liquor. So a spirit is any kind of hard alcohol. It can be a liqueur, it can be whiskey. So we don't know who lives in this house, but we know a little bit about it, right? We walk in, we see the big windows, we see the chairs in velvet. There's a bearskin rug, which is just in the shape of a bear. It's made from a bear's skin, in front of the fireplace. And then we can imagine sitting in the armchair, and there's pipes, tobacco, alcohol, a soda machine. That's a lot of evidence already, right? Okay. So who do we think lives here? A man. Okay, wait, hold on a second. We're going to collect our evidence here. I know that it might be a little hard for the audience on Facebook Live to see it, but I need to write it just so I don't forget it. I'll also say it out loud, really loud. Okay, so we think it's a man. Are we in agreement? Let's take yeah, man? Who thinks man? Well, okay. Does anyone, I guess other people don't know, does anyone strongly think, we don't know yet, no idea? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's split, so I'm going to put a red question mark there. Just for the audience on Facebook Live, that was a red question mark. Okay, a man, maybe. We haven't gotten very far. So far we have maybe a man. What else? A wealthy man. Okay, so wealthy. Who thinks wealthy is probably right? That's more people than men. Yeah, do we like wealthy? Someone in this side of the room. What makes you think that the person that lives here is wealthy? Toleni? Nonai? Okay, the bearskin rug and the velvet. So it's luxurious to have velvet, and also not a lot of people have a bearskin rug. I've only seen one once in my life. Okay, so the bearskin rug and the velvet make us think wealthy. Yes, the posh street as well. The house is in an expensive area. So we're taking evidence from outside the house, evidence from inside the house. Okay, what else? I'm sorry? He does not live alone. Okay, so maybe family man. Okay, family man or woman, because we didn't decide if it was a man or woman. So maybe we'll put family. Why do you say family?
I'm not saying family, I just say
not alone.
might not live
Okay.
friends.
Okay. Might live with friends. Okay. If a man lives alone, no more than 2 armchairs. That's good. There are armchairs. It only says armchairs. We don't know how many armchairs, but there are more than 1 armchair. An armchair for a guest or an armchair for someone that lives there. What about like the atmosphere? So it feels rich. We can all kind of agree on that. That's pretty easy. We think it kind of feels a little masculine, maybe. But what else? What kind of things are in there? Do you have any sense of the personality of the person that lives there? Adventurous. Why adventurous? Okay, so yeah, bearskin kind of says adventurous. So wealthy, I'm going to add this to wealthy. Adventurous. Sorry? Arrange? Okay, so yeah, so what you're saying is everything's arranged carefully. So it's like a neat person. Like, yeah, a neat person is someone who's kind of, I'm going to use an even harder word, fastidious. A neat person likes to have everything just so in their apartment. Clean, orderly, organized, neat, organized. It sounds romantic? Oh, we didn't talk about the violin yet. What do we think about the violin? Maybe it's a musician. Maybe it's a bear hunting musician. Okay, so there's a missing one bear hunting musician who likes soda water. No? I thought you had your hand up? Come. I want to hear a theory from someone. Here's my theory. Okay, this is the person who's missing is a wild romantic who hunts bears and plays in the symphony orchestra, and has run off to go hunt more bears. Has disappeared. I think it is a man who is a musician, but a wealthy musician. That's my theory. Addicted to what? Oh, addicted. Okay, yeah. Well, so she's pointing out something important, that it's not just tobacco. Where is the tobacco?
Yes.
Right near the chair, right? So whoever this guy is, he doesn't even want to get up and go to smoke. He's like, no, I got to have it right by my chair. So there's tobacco, there's alcohol, there's a lot of pleasurable things in this room. There's things to smoke, there's things to drink, there's a soft chair, there's a soft bear carpet, there's music.
person who lives here is someone who's very smart.
Hmm?
Probably intelligent.
Smart. Okay. Why do you say smart?
Like, I think he might be a detective. Undercover.
Oh, someone undercover. We're going a little. I don't disagree, but that's a kind of a leap from the evidence. What makes you say that?
Because the interior of the house doesn't indicate that he actually lives here. That he needs to stay.
Okay. It doesn't. What? It doesn't feel like he. It doesn't feel like he lives there full time. It feels a little like a sitting room. We're going to come back to that. Does anyone else want to give me a theory on who this is? I don't want to hear just, they're adventurous, they're a man, they like to smoke. My theory is bear hunting musician. Okay, hold on a second, because that's easy. Give us your theory.
I think he inherits the house and all the stuff from his parents, which they were really rich, and the house is really old, and he went broke or something, and he became addicted to tobacco and spirits.
Thank you. So one theory of the case is romantic bear hunting musician. Another theory is an heir, a rich boy who got addicted and depressed and maybe has just left because he's depressed. He got the house from his family. But that's not all that's in the house. We've only seen one room. We got to keep going, right? We got to gather more evidence. Us and our partner have to look a little bit deeper. And sometimes when you're researching for an essay or investigating a crime scene, I think probably most people here will just research essays, but who knows, maybe someone here will investigate a crime scene. You get evidence that doesn't match up. So this is our complicating evidence. We go into another room and we find a full set of American encyclopedia and many reference books on the shelf. Does everyone know? They're a little old-fashioned. I can't believe I'm asking this. Someone tell me what an encyclopedia is. It's like Wikipedia, but on paper. And only a few people write it instead of everyone in the world. Wikipedia is named after encyclopedia. When I went to middle school and high school, I had to have whole research sessions with the encyclopedia as my starting point. Wiki, I think this is right. Wiki is a Hawaiian language that means fast, and pedia for encyclopedia. Wikipedia. Encyclopedia is basically a resource for general knowledge. If I want to know about llamas, I go to the encyclopedia. If I want to know about the currency in Bolivia, I go to the encyclopedia, and it will tell me. So, encyclopedia and reference books. They were also very expensive and very big. A set of encyclopedia, when you line it up, would be like from here to over here. And people, they would have traveling encyclopedia salesmen that would say, buy the encyclopedia, and you only pay $20 a month for 10 years. That's probably an exaggeration. But they were expensive, and you could buy them on a plan. There's also scientific charts tacked to the walls over an acid-charred bench of chemicals. The word char, do you guys know the word char? Char, what does char mean? Someone shout it out for me. Give it a little louder. Charred is burnt. Burnt. So there's scientific charts on the walls over an acid-charged bench of chemicals. So there's a bench, like a research table or a workbench, and it's burnt. It's been burnt by acid or by some chemicals. There's also a filthy desk covered in paper, bundles of manuscript in every corner, and an additional space filled with nothing but old newspapers. If you have a guess, don't give it to me yet. I'm talking to you. Okay, So we walk in the first room, and this is the room of a rich society person. It's a little lonely, but you know, it's comfortable. There's music, there's lots of things to entertain ourselves with. We can drink, we can listen to the violin, we can smoke. And we go into this room, and it feels a little different, right? What kind of room is this? Yeah, it's a lab. It's a room for studying. Somebody said, you said, organized, neat. Does this room feel organized and neat to you? How does it feel? It's messy. It's messy. It's also a little crazy. Because like, who has a space that's I just keep old newspapers. I just keep them. There's nothing but old newspapers. There's bundles of manuscript, not bundles of manuscript on the desk, on the table, bundles of manuscript on the floor, in every corner. The desk is described as filthy. This is evidence that's very different from the evidence we gathered about our missing person. If we stepped into the front room and we're like, we need to figure out who lives here. We examined the front room, we did our profile, we went home. We've done a terrible job. Just like if you're doing your research, you read 2 articles, you're like, I got it. You write your essay, write your claims, done. Submit, wait for your A. No. You need to walk into the second room. Because the second room is still about the same subject, and it's very different. So now we know that our missing person has kind of a messy side, right? Now that we know this additional information, so who are we thinking of? What kind of a person is this that has that front room all fancy and luxurious and has the back room a little crazy and messy? A rocket, okay, so he said a rocket scientist, a researcher, a scholar, a magician, a detective. Someone had said detective, or no, someone said undercover. Undercover detective. Someone with split personality. Yeah, an explorer. There is something about research and exploring that is similar. When you're researching, you are exploring to try and get the truth. This person is certainly has time on their hands to do their experiments with chemicals and to write their manuscripts and to save all their newspapers. There's one more room. There's one more room. Any game has to have 3 steps. That's the rule for games. Okay, does anyone want to give me a profile of him now that or her, now that we know this additional evidence? We've gathered this additional evidence. What kind of person do we think is missing? We've heard kind of a spy. Does anyone want to give me something more than that? Okay. So an industrial expert. Okay. So maybe a researcher that works for a big company. Okay. Okay. A researcher that works for himself. Okay. A noble scientist. A secret scientist. Secret noble scientist. Okay. I think it sounds just as convincing as my musician bear hunter. Okay, so kind of a secret noble scientist with a polite side, but who's also a little messy. Give me other adjectives about what kind of person would have this. Not their job, but like before we said neat, now what do we think? Sorry? Maybe a hunter, but not a job, not a pastime, like an adjective. Hardworking. Introvert, I like that. Why introvert? Very good. Yeah. This seems like a room where he or she spends a lot of time by themselves, doing research, reading old newspapers over and over again. Very good. I like introvert a lot. What else? There's another word that comes to my mind. It starts with O. It's a good English word. Knowledgeable starts with K, but I agree. Knowledgeable. A knowledgeable, introverted person who's disorganized. Observant, very good. Observant. Yeah, a few people have said multi-personalities, or at least a complex personality. And the other word I'll help you guys with, unless someone wants to give me an O word right now. No. Who said it? Gift. Very good. Obsessive. Yes. Obsessive. Obsessive. So obsessive that, like, because this is a person who clearly likes things to be neat. The front room is very neat, but in the workspace, so obsessive that, like, God, I don't have time even to clean the floor. My manuscripts are on the floor. I'm not going to clean my workbench. I'm going to do my experiment, and I'm going to go on. Obsessive, introverted, split personality. It's kind of a passionate room. I like it. Very good. Okay. Now, your partner finds another room in the back. And this room has a pistol in the top drawer of the desk. Everyone knows the word pistol, right? It's a handgun, just a handgun. There are bullet holes in the wall opposite the armchair. There's a bottle filled with drugs on the corner of the mantel. And there are pictures of celebrated criminals adorning every wall. Do you know when we use the word celebrated in this way, it doesn't mean anyone's celebrating. If I'm celebrated novelist, a celebrated criminal is a famous criminal. Like Al Capone, he's like a famous criminal. Okay, so we got a pistol, we have bullet holes, we got a bottle filled with drugs on the corner of the mantle. So I guess like tobacco is for the front room and drugs are for the back room. And pictures of criminals. This is even another complication. First, we have kind of rich, lonely, neat music lover, high society posh person. Then we have crazy mad scientist. And now, what is this? What's going on here? Bad person. Why bad person? So so celebrated criminals on the wall, like if I'm young and I have posters of like Vietnamese footballers on the wall, like I love them, they're my idols. The criminals are this person's idols. Yeah. Okay, bad. So bad person. What else makes you say bad? Not just the two of you, but anyone else. Drugs. Yeah. There's a jar of drugs. The jar is a lot of drugs. I want to do a poll. Who thinks that this is, because we started off just wondering who's the missing person, and now the story is coming together. We thought first one thing, then we thought something else, and we looked even deeper, and now maybe we don't like this person anymore. Who thinks this is a bad person? Please put your hands up. We got not no one, but not super many. Someone who you in the back, you have your hand up very high, thinking this is a bad person. Can you tell me why? Okay. Okay, so I like what he's saying. So he said, I'll just repeat with the microphone, that this was kind of the house of a mad scientist who maybe had some bad friends, and this mad scientist was either killed himself or was killed by a criminal, and the criminal, this is actually the criminal's evidence. The criminal kind of settled in this room. So he's actually saying that the evidence seems so different. You're even saying it's not just one person, it's two people. We have evidence from person number 1 in the first 2 rooms and evidence from person number 2 in the back. I like it. I think that's interesting.
Actually, based on evidence, I think about the story of Sherlock Holmes.
Of who?
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
What makes you think of the story of Sherlock Holmes?
Because when you combine evidence about the people have a job detective
Yeah.
and also have some how can I say skill to detective the criminal.
Yeah.
But
Okay, so when you see the criminals on the wall, it's not a celebration. It's not like I like these people. It's more like research. Yeah? You agree? Okay. Crazy mad scientist detective. Here are our. We're going to do one quick review of all the complicating evidence we've got. I've highlighted it in red. So we got the velvet armchairs, the posh street, the fireplace, the music, the rug, the pipes and tobacco, the spirits. Lots of pleasurable things. Lots of worldly, rich, posh things. We have a lot of things relating to research and study, the encyclopedia, the charts, the chemicals. They're also a very disorganized style of research and study. The filthy desk, the old newspaper, the manuscripts. And then we have a pistol, bullet holes, drugs, celebrated criminals. What about the fact of where the bullet holes are and where the pistol is? The pistol is in the desk. The bullet holes are on the wall opposite the armchair. What does that mean? Might be he was practice shooting, right? Because if this is my armchair, and I'm this missing character, and I'm sitting right here. The bullet holes are, and my desk is here. I open my desk and I take my gun. I shoot the wall. There's no dead body, there's no blood, so we don't know why this person was shooting. Sorry? Yeah? Could be practicing. Let's do one final vote. We have a theory coming together that this is a detective of some kind. We've gotten a lot of evidence. We've had an evolving idea of what our claim will be. But now, it's time to go back to the police station, time to make our report. So we need to have a theory. We need to say who we think this is. So our partner, right now you two are our partner, and the rest of us are us, says they think it's a detective. Do we agree with that generally, or do we think no, we're not convinced? Let me do a show of hands, and don't be shy to vote. Who thinks it's a detective? Put your hands up. Yeah?
this looks like
Not just a detective, it's the detective. This is the room and house of Sherlock Holmes. Every detail in that exercise comes from the Arthur Conan Doyle books. Every detail there is something that appears in Sherlock Holmes' house in one of the Arthur Conan Doyle books. It's both his house and, somebody said, it doesn't seem like he lives there because it's his office. It's B121, 21? I need to scroll back. 221B Baker Street. It's an office, it's a research lab, it's a home, it's a place to relax, and a place to be an obsessive, crazy person. Sherlock Holmes is a good example. The reason, I'm in Vietnam, right? We're all in Vietnam. Sherlock Holmes is not written here. Sherlock Holmes is not written in the United States. But I know who Sherlock Holmes is. And you guys know who Sherlock Holmes is. Just like I know who Harry Potter is. And you guys know who Harry Potter is. And it's not just, the conclusion to draw is not just that English writers are better, even though English writers are very good. The conclusion is that Sherlock Holmes is an interesting character because he's complicated, right? He is kind of crazy. He does have a split personality. He does love luxury. He is high society. He's also hard to get along with and an obsessive and neat and messy at the same time. And if we didn't look at all of that evidence, we wouldn't be describing Sherlock Holmes. Just as when you're researching a topic and you're like, I only want to look at part of the evidence, you're not talking about your topic anymore. You are not making a truthful claim about what you're trying to describe. It's obviously impossible, especially because we all have things to do, we have to shop, we have to feed ourselves, we have other classes. You're not going to be able to write a book about every topic you study. But the broadest amount of evidence you can look at, especially contrary evidence, anything that complicates your idea of your subject, it might seem stressful. When my university students find a piece of evidence that doesn't agree with their claim, I can just see the stress in their face, like, crap, I gotta find different evidence. No, you just gotta change your claim. And that sounds like more work, but it's gonna give you a better claim, it's gonna give you a more truthful essay. And when you're telling the truth, it's just less boring. If you find complicating evidence, congratulations. A good claim is specific and defensible. The more evidence you have, the more specific you can get, and the more completely you can defend it. Yeah, I'll leave it on the knee for one moment for everyone to enjoy. Okay, we're going to move off of complicating evidence a little bit, and I want to talk now about evidence in context and understanding the context around a piece of evidence the way I demonstrated when I made a lousy claim in the beginning of the class, when I was scolding, very unfairly, 1/3 of the class for arriving late. That was me taking evidence out of context. That was me finding evidence to suit my claim, as opposed to having my claim be informed by the evidence I found. We're going to do a little context game now. But before we do it, I have to give you the evidence. So I'm going to give you a tour. We're moving from England, even though you didn't know you were in England until the end of the game. We're moving from England to Syracuse, New York. Who has heard of Syracuse before? Raise your hand, please. Which one have you heard of? Have you heard of the Syracuse in Greece? You have? Really? Oh, very few Americans have. New York State has a lot of names that are from Greek, a lot of names that are from ancient Rome. But Syracuse is a town. It's like a big town, a small city in central New York. I lived there for 4 years. I love it, even though it's very, very cold and has a lot of snow. It was my home for a long time. It was my home as long as Vietnam has been my home. And I really enjoyed it. It's far from New York City. Sorry? No. I was studying university there. Syracuse is famous nowadays. It was famous for different reasons before. Nowadays, one of the main reasons it's famous is a very big university there. There's a big private school there, and the school is the size of some cities. And they have a very famous, very terrible football team. This is downtown Syracuse, Clinton Square. Beautiful at night, beautiful buildings, a lot of American history is in Syracuse. I'll give you a few important facts. I already said it's a long-established city with many beautiful buildings. This is the skyline, and the background is very green, it's very clean. It's home to the large, famous Syracuse University. It's right in the middle of New York State. So from Syracuse, you go one direction, you get to Toronto in Canada. You go another direction, and you get to New York City. It's the largest city in the whole region. And when you look at the greater metropolitan area, the whole surroundings, it's home to about 1 million people. And I know for Hanoians that's going to be like, not big. But for that part of the country, it's pretty big. New York City is 5 hours away by car. So in that part of New York State, Syracuse is the big city. It's also historically very important. Syracuse grew during the time of the Erie Canal, before railroads. These are the Great Lakes in the United States. Well, in the United States and Canada, but we won't talk about the Canadian part. And when there was trade from New York, there was a long period of time when before the settlers and the early Americans had gone all the way to the West Coast, they had a dream that there was some way to get from the East Coast of the United States to the Pacific Ocean in a boat. And they were always looking for a river crossing that could do it, because they did not know yet that the Rocky Mountains were out there saying no. So there were boat passages and there were canals dug that connected Syracuse to Buffalo, to Cleveland, to Detroit, to Chicago. Everyone here has heard of Chicago, right? Chicago is the major city in the Midwest. It also connected Syracuse to the cities of Toronto and through Toronto, Ottawa in Canada. Syracuse was on the trading route and it became very important that way. And after the Erie Canal was not as important, and I just want to make sure I'm describing it because it's a very weird thing. The Erie Canal was, they made a river. They dug a giant river and they would send boats down it. They flooded it with water, they would send boats down it, and that's how goods would move from New York through to Syracuse, then into the lakes, then through more lakes, through more canals to Chicago. Very important as the United States was industrializing. And after the canals stopped being used as much, it was the railway. This is a painting of this beautiful square. In fact, this water feature here, it's filled with water, they do that to commemorate the canal. This used to be where the boats would go, right between the buildings. This was exactly the canal. And then the railway came through. And the railway would go right through the middle of the city, moving goods and produce. Syracuse is very famous for its early industry. They were a manufacturing center. They were what Vietnam has become and is still becoming right now. They had the automobile industry, cars and car parts. This is an old auto ad from the early days of the auto industry, manufactured in Syracuse. They had a lot of steel milling in Syracuse. But they also had fine goods. They had glass, fine glassware, also china, window glass was all made in Syracuse. The ceramics industry, there's a brand that's still famous today called Syracuse China. Syracuse China is a very famous brand. They were also later famous for air conditioning. The Carrier air conditioning brand had their biggest plant in Syracuse, and they were headquartered in Syracuse. They were also the #1 manufacturer of TVs when television started to boom in the United States, and when people didn't want to go to the cinema anymore, everyone wanted a TV at home so they could watch things at home. Very, very important historical town. This is Syracuse from the air, and I lived right here. This is the university. This is historic downtown. And Clinton Square is like, there it is. That's that water we were looking at, Clinton Square here. They've got a Museum of Science and Technology, theaters, and then this university has a lot of research in it. It's a very big, modern, famous university. All right. Now we're going to get into a little bit of data. So far we have a lot of evidence about Syracuse. I've told you a lot about this town. Not where I come from, but a town that I love and a town that I lived in. So you so far have a pretty big amount of evidence, and now we're getting into more hard evidence, data. We're going to look at a few different maps. This is a income pattern, family income pattern in downtown Syracuse. And you can see that it goes from this color here down to this color here, and so the center is all kind of this bright, clean white. That's downtown Syracuse. And if you move out a little bit, you can see that the whole downtown area and the university, right? So the university has this, and then as you go out, the pattern changes a little bit. If you had to make a guess about what this means, what would you guess? Wait, I haven't talked about the weather yet. No, I'm asking what you think about Syracuse, the town, not the university. What you've got a lot of data about the industry, right? You've got data about income patterns, whoops, where's my laser? There it is. Income patterns in Syracuse. My question is, why does it look like this? I want you to interpret it for me. I want you to interpret this data for me. Why is it so much brighter in the center and then different, much darker on the outside? I don't know.
So like the lighter,
I don't know, maybe.
it's like
He said the brighter the color, the higher the income. It's a good question.
it's a typical town, like the downtown's where people concentrate.
Yeah. The downtown is going to be probably richer or poorer. I heard one or two poorers, but I heard mostly richers. If you guys were looking at this, given the evidence that I've given you, right? Based on the evidence that I've told you, looking at this map, and we can even go out one more. Now we're really zoomed out. Now we're pretty far out. So this is a big lake. I used to go canoeing on this lake. I love it. And you can see the pattern is it's very, very, very bright here, and then it gets to kind of tan around the city, and then you get to these kind of greens and blues outside. And there are some areas that are very dark. We all have the same amount of information. Nobody did any secret Syracuse research before this class. What do you think this pattern means? Go on, Dee.
Still people in those towns.
The people, so okay, so he seems very convinced. The people inside the town are richer. So you would make a claim that downtown Syracuse is where the wealth is concentrated, and then as you get outside into the countryside, it's much poorer. Okay. Does that sound, let me hear from the back of the room or the side a little bit. Does that sound reasonable? Do we think we agree with that? Yeah? Why? Okay. Let's compare it to our own experience, right? Because we all live in Hanoi. Unless anyone came from Bali to see me today. If you did, thank you. But we all live in Hanoi. How is wealth distributed in Hanoi? Yeah? What's the richest part of Hanoi? Hotai? Westlake? Okay. Okay. And if I drive outside of Hanoi 50 kilometers, is it the same amount of money, more money, less money? Whoa, everyone agree. Less money. Okay. So that's our personal experience. Why is that the case? Why do people with money live in the city center? That's no. You can't just repeat the claim and say it's a reason. We have to think critically. That's like saying why is the carpet blue? And you say because the carpet's blue. Or you say because the carpet's not yellow. No. High what? Okay, so higher living standard in the city center. Good. That's one potential reason. Higher living standard. What do you mean by higher living standard? What's better about living in the city center? There's infrastructure, exactly. Okay. Yeah, so there's infrastructure, there's offices, there's services. You said hospitals, right? If I need health services, basically anywhere I am in Hanoi, I'm pretty close to a place where I can get health services. What else? Someone from this side of the room. What's good? What's attractive about living in the city center?
Convenient transportation.
Yeah, I'm close to. It's not just services. I'm close to my friends. I'm close to restaurants. And I can either take my motorbike because it's close, or I'm just a grab away. Or what is the other one? Go bike? Go Viet. Uber. So yeah, there's convenient transportation, there's goods and services, there's a higher quality of living. What else? Yeah, we can also say it's interesting. Even if it's not a service, there's things to do. There's beautiful places to see. There's new people to meet. Very good. Well, I mean, I don't think you should go to the countryside and say, where are all the beautiful girls?
Actually, there are so many women and girls living from ethnic.
Yeah, so not just women and girls. There's a lot of people from the provinces who come to Hanoi, right? There's a lot of people, if you're walking through Hanoi, it could be you don't know, or maybe I don't know because I can't hear the accent. Có lẽ các bạn gặp mọi người Thanh Hoa tiếng Việt luôn. Nhưng there's many people you'll see, maybe they've been in Hanoi 10 years, maybe they got Hanoi, or maybe they've only been here a few months, a year. Hanoi is a draw. People around Hanoi, whether it's far away, like Nam Dinh, or whether it's quite close, like Ba Vi, people around the provinces are coming to Hanoi. There's one big thing we didn't talk about. Why would someone move to Hanoi? 2 reasons. There would be something here that they might not have where they live. Yes, job opportunities is a big one. Especially if I want to work in a field that is concentrated in Hanoi. If I want to work in tech, if I want to work in marketing, I'm going to have better opportunities to do that in the city center in Hanoi than I might have in Nam Dinh. There's another one, like job opportunities. What do you do before you get a job? I said, what do you do before Facebook Live? What do you do before you get a job? And he just said entertainment. Sorry. There's an important thing to do before you get a job, because when you apply for a job, they'll say, where did you study? Where did you graduate? Educational opportunities. There are universities here. There are choices of schools. There are choices of high schools. Educational opportunities, professional opportunities, social opportunities are concentrated in the city center, right? And so we all have kind of the impression, based on our own experience, that the city center is where the resources are, where the money is. It also comes with downsides, right? How is rent in Hanoi? Someone said stupidly expensive. Good use of English. Stupidly expensive. It's expensive. It's more expensive than outside of the city. It's more expensive to buy a house than outside of the city. So we're operating with a few different things. We have the evidence I gave you about Syracuse. We have this data here. And we have our biases, our own personal experience. And not necessarily bias, just knowledge. We know stuff because we're alive and we pay attention. Which leads us to think a certain way about the data we're seeing. So I'm going to ask again, if you guys were in downtown Syracuse today, do you think it's probably pretty nice? Yeah. It is. I like it a lot. It's quite nice. Doesn't have a lot of money though. Wow. U.S. median household income, and this is as of 2017, so somewhat old math, is a little over $50,000 a year for a household. So this color here is making less than half of U.S. median income. This, just so there's no confusion, this area is, I gotta go back a little bit, that's this. This city. This Clinton Square is in the heart of that area. Do you know what is in these office buildings? No one. They're empty. They can't rent them anymore because the businesses, no, not because they're not allowed to. They want to rent them. If you go right now, they'll rent to you. They can't find tenants because there's not the economy to support it. Because the household income in downtown Syracuse is less than half. If you look at, so here, yes. If you look at slightly outside, it's still under the median. Look at this dark color, more than 82,000. That's approaching like 70% more. You've got these very rich areas here. All around Syracuse is richer than Syracuse. All the suburbs and the countryside have more money than downtown Syracuse. What is going on that there was all these rich people here? What's going on that there's all these rich people here? The rich people have moved outside of the city. This represents the dangers, even though you were pretty clever and you immediately noticed that I didn't put numbers on my graph. It would have been more helpful to me if you took a little more time to notice that. But this demonstrates the danger of using our own experience to make inferences about the data we're seeing, the evidence we're collecting. We collect evidence about a city, and sure, we know how cities work. We live in a city. We live in Hanoi. We should be able to make conclusions about a city. We live in one. We know that downtown Hanoi is richer than the outside. And then we got evidence about the city from me, which was all true. It was. Emphasis on was. The automobile industry is closed, the steel industry is closed, the grass industry is closed, the ceramics industry is closed. Do you know they still make Syracuse ceramics? They still have the brand name. You can still buy them. Guess where they're made? The brand name was bought, the factory was moved. You were going to say? No. The air conditioning factory was the last one to close. The television factory is closed. No cars are being made in Syracuse. Now it gets even more complicated, right? It's not just Syracuse, it's all of the towns. Look at this poor center, surrounded by money, and then surrounded by what? No money. Same thing with the city of Rochester. You see a very pale center. This is the downtown, surrounded by money, by households with income, and then nothing. Even more so with Buffalo, which is actually the biggest city in the area. Very poor center, money on the outside. Utica is a small city, but the pattern is still there. Very poor center, money on the outside. We don't have to, we'll get there. I promise, and I promise I'll come to you guys who wanted to volunteer. But this is now additional evidence. It's not just that, because before it could have been, oh, well, Syracuse, they had that horrible accident, and now it's radioactive, so obviously no one lives there. Syracuse had the big fire. All the people had to move out of the buildings. It hasn't recovered. That's why nobody lives in the center. No. It's part of a pattern. And it's a pattern that's the opposite from our experience here in Hanoi. And it's not just New York. This is something that's happening all over the United States. Now, to understand this evidence, it needs to be understood in context. When I spoke about the industries in Syracuse, I did not show you a modern picture. I showed you a very old-fashioned picture. And I chose things, everything I said was true, right? Everything I said was true. It was all evidence. Exactly. We did not understand this evidence in context. But there are clues, right? I mean, I'm talking about the steel industry, the automobile industry with this old picture, ceramics, air conditioning. We have enough clues to ask ourselves, is this still happening? We missed the context of the story. We also missed the context of the data, because most of us are making assumptions, and they're not the wrong assumptions to make. This isn't like a ha-ha, tricked you. I wouldn't say swinging attack. Especially someone who's not familiar with patterns of income and inequality in the United States. It makes sense based on your own experience to make that kind of leap in logic. But the point is, when you do that, it's possible not only to be wrong, but to be super wrong. super duper wrong, opposite wrong. What do you think is happening? Why are these 4 cities, actually we can even wrap Binghamton in there, a small city, even a small city has the same pattern. Tiny little poor downtown, somehow there's money all around it, and then the countryside is poor. What's going on? Now we're allowed to make guesses. Okay, maybe town center's too crowded and stressful. Are you going to say the same thing? Okay, environmental reasons. That's so. I have a question that he's getting at what I wanted to get at. We were talking about all the money is in Teho, all the money is in the center. Where is Saputra? I don't need directions. You can just say really far away. Saputra is a little far away. Royal City, Time City, Aeon Mall at Long Bien. Where are the big residential developments happening in Hanoi? Why do you think that might? Come on guys, come on. You just spent all this time explaining to me why it makes sense to live in the center. You just said, oh, there's the transportation, and there's the jobs, and the food is delicious, and so many beautiful women. Right? Oh, nobody said that before. Oh, you're talking about these downtowns. The downtowns can get dense. Density brings problems. Downtowns can have crime. And sometimes families that have money decide, I want a car. I want to have a bigger house. I don't need to be a short walk from the grocery store because I can afford a car. What's happening in Hanoi? Are people buying cars?
Yes.
They're even making them. They're making cars here. We have the VinFast. We have, I used to know the number back when I was here with associated with the embassy, but there's a large number of cars that get imported, even with the tax, a large number of cars that get imported every month. I came to Hanoi for the first time in 2014, and that's not a long time ago. And already I've seen a change. When I asked about why everything's in the city center, no one in the room mentioned Long Bien or Saputra or Royal City, or that people want larger houses, or that there's more cars coming. The pattern that happened in the United States happens in a lot of developed countries, and you can see it begin to happen in developing countries. But again, it's difficult to see if you haven't taken the time to look at all the evidence. Just looking here isn't even enough. We need to see it here to understand, oh, this is not just a specific weird case. This is a trend. This is the thing I always struggle with, and I'm going to end with it. When I am working with my students working on their essays, they're always thinking of their evidence as a fist, right? Or as an arrow. They're like, I got to win this fight. I got to win this argument. So I need a big fist. I need a big, heavy fist. I need a good piece of evidence. I'm going to hit him with this one, then I'm going to hit him with the other one. The evidence is their weapons in winning the argument. That is not how critical thinking happens. Critical thinking is about seeking understanding. And for those of you who are here from my first class, remember, academic writing is critical thinking that happens on paper. If the writing process does not mimic the thinking process, you're doing it wrong. And if you don't deal with evidence in context and look at all of the evidence, including complicating evidence, you are going to risk misunderstanding your subject. So start with the evidence, ask questions, Don't make assumptions, even if you feel really strongly like you know the reason why. Even like we all felt really strongly like, well, there's money in Tejo and there's money in the Old Quarter. So downtown Syracuse must be booming. And the more evidence you have, the stronger your conclusions will be. I know it's hard to get everyone involved when there's this number of people, but thank you all for participating. I really like these two exercises. I've taught both of them at university in the United States. I've taught the Syracuse one in Syracuse. And in Syracuse, my students in Syracuse also were fooled by it, so don't feel too bad. They lived there and they couldn't see it. But that's the thing, when you live in a place, it's easy to miss those kinds of things. So for now, I'm going to thank you guys for coming and invite you to the next two. It's on, I can be corrected if I'm wrong, but there's another one next Wednesday and another one next Friday. Oh, you guys know. I really appreciate you coming. I also really appreciate those of you who've been here one time or two times for coming back. Thank you everyone on Facebook Live who was watching. If you, there's still a chance to come to in person to one in the future. I think it's only standby though. I'm going to hang out for a little while if you want to chat with me. Give me a second to take a drink though because my voice is dying. Other than that, I had a lot of fun today. I like this class. I like you guys. Thank you. Happy weekend.